It's 2 a.m. Your eyes snap open in the dark. Nothing woke you. No noise, no bad dream, no reason at all. You're just awake. And your very first thought is the modern one. Something is wrong with me. So you reach for your phone. It's 2:14. You start doing the cruel little math on how many hours you have left before the alarm, and somehow the math only makes everything worse. You lie there, annoyed, a little anxious, completely certain that normal people sleep straight through the night. Here's the strange part. For almost all of human history, nobody lying in that bed would have panicked, not even a little. So why do you? Because somewhere in the last 200 years, we quietly rewrote the rules of sleep, and then forgot we ever did it. That perfect 8-hour block you chase every single night? It might be the single youngest thing about your whole evening. Stay with me, because this is the good part. We're going to walk backward through the record, the crumbling diaries, the court files, the sleep labs, and find out what your ancestors actually did in the dark at midnight. And then we're going to hit the twist. The one almost nobody tells you. The part that makes this a lot stranger than a fun fact for a dinner party. Because the real answer isn't even about sleep. It's about what we quietly traded away to build the modern night we all live in now. Let's start with the thing you've never once questioned. The assumption is simple. Sleep is one solid brick. 8 unbroken hours, lights out until sunrise. It's so obvious it doesn't even feel like a belief you hold. It just feels like sleep itself. But go hunting for that neat little brick in old writing, and you smack straight into a problem. It isn't there. Instead, again and again, in country after country, in language after language, people casually mention 2 sleeps, a first sleep and a second. Here's the part nobody puts in the textbooks. The man who first really noticed wasn't a sleep scientist at all. He was a historian named Roger Ekirch, and he wasn't even studying sleep. He was studying the night, how ordinary people lived after dark in the centuries before electric light. Then, buried inside a 17th century crime report, he found a phrase that stopped him cold. First sleep, not sleep. First sleep. Written like it was completely obvious there was a second one coming. So he started counting. 16 years of digging. Diaries, prayer books, medical guides, plays, court transcripts. And he turned up more than 500 separate references to the exact same pattern. The pattern went like this. People went to bed a couple of hours after dark. They slept hard. They woke on their own around midnight. They stayed up for an hour, maybe 2. Then they slid back under until dawn. And it wasn't only England. The same 2 sleeps show up in French, in Italian, in old records as far away as Africa and South America. They stretch across 300 years of writing, Chaucer's century, all the way up to the edge of the industrial world. It turns up in Dickens. It turns up in the advice of medieval doctors. The Romans even had a phrase for that opening stretch, primus somnus, which just means the first sleep. And here's the real tell. Nobody ever bothered to explain what first sleep meant. Writers just dropped it into a sentence, the way you'd write lunchtime. No footnote, no definition, no big deal at all. Because every reader already knew exactly what they meant. You don't explain the obvious, and back then, 2 sleeps was the obvious. Which means the exact thing torturing you tonight. That dreaded 2 a.m. wake-up. Used to have a name. It wasn't a glitch. It was on the schedule. Okay, this is where it gets weird. Because now you have to picture that middle hour. You're wide awake, in the pitch dark, at midnight, and it is completely, boringly normal. So what on earth do you do with it? The answer, it turns out, is basically everything. People prayed. There were actual prayer manuals printed for that specific gap between the 2 sleeps, with special prayers to murmur while you waited for round 2. People talked to whoever they shared a bed with, low and half asleep. Couples who'd been far too wiped out at bedtime, after a full day of real, aching physical work, suddenly discovered they had a bit more energy at 1 in the morning. Make of that what you will. One French doctor actually recommended the moment right after first sleep as the very best time to conceive a child. Plenty of people simply got up. They chopped a little wood. They checked on the animals. Some slipped next door to sit with a neighbor they knew would also be awake. Others just poked at the dying fire and sat there and thought. Turned the whole day over. Chewed on a dream they'd just had. Picture it. A whole household stirring at once in the dark, low murmured voices. A fire nudged back to life. Then everyone slowly drifting down again together. The night had its own quiet society, its own unspoken rules for who you'd meet and what got said. You just didn't make a big deal of it once the sun came up. Stay with me. This is the good part. Because a fair, skeptical voice in your head should be pushing back right about now. Old diaries are lovely, but they're just words on a page. Could you actually make this happen to a real, modern, 21st century human? In the early 1990s, a researcher named Thomas Wehr decided to find out. And what he did was simple. and just a little bit brutal. He took a group of volunteers and stripped out all their artificial light. For weeks, every single night, they got 14 full hours of darkness. Roughly what a deep winter night feels like, with no lamps, no bulbs, no glowing screens anywhere in the house. At first, nothing fancy happened. They just slept a ton, quietly paying off a lifetime of sleep debt. But after a while, something shifted underneath them. Their sleep gently cracked in two. A first block, then a long, calm stretch of wakefulness, right in the dead middle of the night. Then a second block until morning. Nobody told them to do it. Their own bodies just reached for it. And here's the eerie little detail. During that middle stretch, the volunteers weren't tossing and spiraling the way you are at 2 a.m. Their bodies were washed in a hormone tied to calm, drifting, almost meditative states. They described the hour as peaceful, restful, genuinely nice. Sit with how strange that is for a second. You wake at 2 a.m. and your body floods with stress. Theirs did the exact opposite. Same clock, same darkness. A completely different animal on the inside. Now, one careful, honest word here, because this is exactly where the internet starts lying to you. That was a small study. And 14 hours of total darkness is an extreme, artificial setup that no modern person actually lives in. So this is not hard proof that you're secretly, deep down wired for two sleeps. It's a hint. A strong, fascinating hint that when a night gets long and dark and genuinely empty, human sleep tends to break along a seam that already seems to be sitting there, waiting, which is either deeply comforting or deeply inconvenient, depending on how you feel about your alarm clock. Probably both. So how did we ever lose it? Slowly, and then all at once. Coffee houses threw open their doors and kept the evening running long past dark. Street lamps turned midnight into something you could actually walk around in. The night stopped being a solid wall of blackness and started being optional. Suddenly, the dark was a place you could get things done. So people did. Later and later, until bedtime kept sliding toward the small hours. And a new idea took hold right alongside it. That time was money. And lying awake at midnight was a waste of both. Here's the kicker. By the late 1800s, doctors had invented a fresh label for the very same 2 a.m. wake up your ancestors had shrugged off as ordinary. They called it insomnia. Same experience. Brand new problem. We didn't just change the lighting in the room. We changed the entire meaning of being awake in it. And then it gets stranger. Because now I have to be straight with you, in the way the internet usually refuses to be. You'll see this whole story sold as ancient programming, as if cavemen neatly split their sleep 200,000 years ago, and modern life has been at war with our true prehistoric nature ever since. And that specific part, we honestly can't back up. Ekirch's oldest clear reference to two sleeps isn't scratched onto a cave wall. It's tucked inside Homer's Odyssey, from maybe 2,700 years ago, which is genuinely old, but it's barely a blink against the real, staggering age of our species. The written record only reaches back so far, and then it just goes dark on us. So people tried the obvious next thing. They went looking for the pattern in humans who still live today without a single electric light. Hunter-gatherer communities in Tanzania, in Namibia, in Bolivia. Surely the thinking went, they'd find the two sleeps there in their purest, oldest form. Researchers strapped on the sensors. They waited for the data, and they didn't find it. Those communities mostly sleep in one single, solid block, around 6 or 7 hours a night. And they don't nod off at sunset either. They stay awake more than 3 hours into the dark, sitting up, talking by the fire, exactly like anyone else would. What seemed to steer their sleep wasn't some hidden ancestral clock at all. It was the temperature. They drifted off as the night air cooled, and woke as it hit its coldest point, right before dawn. There's a quieter point hiding inside that number. 6 or 7 hours, not 8, not 9. Often a little less than you're getting right now, staring at your ceiling and panicking about it. We spend a fortune chasing a perfect, unbroken 8-hour slab. Pills, apps, gadgets, whole industries. Because we've been told it's our natural birthright, stolen from us by modern life. But if people living without a single light bulb still sleep short in one plain chunk, then maybe that flawless block was never the birthright. Maybe we've been medicating ourselves toward a number that nobody in history actually hit. Now let me be very careful here, because this part really matters. Nobody should look at those communities and see a frozen snapshot of the Stone Age. They are not living fossils. They are modern people, living full modern lives, who simply happen to do it without light bulbs. So what they actually reveal isn't the past at all. It's something better, and honestly more interesting. Human sleep does not roll off the factory line with one single correct setting. It bends. It flexed one way in a freezing, pitch-black, candlelit English winter. It flexes a completely different way around a warm fire near the equator. Two sleeps was never some iron law stamped into your DNA. It was simply what happened when the nights stretched long and cold, and there was truly nothing left to do but lie there and wait for the sun. Let that sit for a second. So the myth was never really that people slept twice. They did, enormous numbers of them, for a very long time. The real myth is the quiet, nagging one you've been carrying around this whole time, that there's a single, true, natural, ancestral way to sleep, and that you're somehow failing at it every single night. There isn't. There never was. Here's the thing modern sleep science quietly agrees on. The waking itself was never really the problem. The panic is. Lie there furious, doing the cruel math on your alarm, and a perfectly calm hour curdles into a miserable one. You're not losing sleep to the wake-up. You're losing it to the dread of the wake-up. Your ancestors just skipped that part entirely. They weren't fighting the dark. They were simply in it. And that, more than the schedule, more than the 2 blocks, might be the real thing we lost. And that changes everything about what your 2 a.m. wake-up actually is. It isn't a defect in you. It isn't a diagnosis waiting to happen. It might just be an old door somewhere in your own head, swinging quietly open in the dark. The very same door your great-great-great-grandparents stepped through every single night, on purpose, without a flicker of worry. So the next time you surface at 2 a.m. and the house is silent and the ceiling is staring right back at you, try not to reach for the panic. You are not broken. You are not the only soul awake on earth. You are in company that runs back further than you could ever hope to count. Every one of them met that same darkness, and every one of them lived to see the morning. A long, unbroken line of people who lay there in the dark, warm and calm and completely unbothered, simply waiting for the second sleep to come. And for them, it always came. Not a problem to be fixed. Just a part of the night, and a part of you. 300,000 years later, you're still doing it. Funny how that works. So tell me, when you wake up in the dead of night, and the whole world has gone quiet, where does your mind actually wander off to? Tell me in the comments.